Shabbat Shalom. It's really wonderful to see you all tonight. We just are not concluding, but pausing. Hopefully we'll sit around the Kaddish tables and continue the conversation because you do have living historical documents here. Living, breathing. So hopefully you'll sit around the Kaddish table and ask. I want to specially welcome you, our guests from Park Avenue Synagogue, Rabbi Pink, Director of Teen and Youth Program, Ariel Gluck, and our teens. We're so glad you're here in Montgomery and that we get to share Shabbat together. A little personal note, I actually lived in Manhattan back in the late 90s and early 2000s. I worked in IT, internet technology, and I even bought my first apartment in Manhattan. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Trump Plaza on 63rd Street. At that time, we didn't know anything about the politics. He was just this guy with his name on a lot of the buildings. Life has taken me on quite a journey since then. And one thing I've learned along the way is that Judaism always finds you a community. You can go from anywhere to anywhere. And wherever you land, there will be a synagogue open and ready to welcome you in. I know that you've been living through a big moment back home with your recent election. I want you to know that Jews across the country, including us here, have been paying attention, caring about what happens, and supporting you. So tonight, as we welcome Shabbat, may this space remind us that the Jewish world is beautifully wide. From Manhattan to Montgomery, we are all part of one story, one people, one song of peace. Shabbat Shalom. Let's go ahead and start with page 5, Shalom Aleichem. Now, sometimes I've actually seen Park Avenue Synagogue on live stream, and you have these beautiful cantors. We have me, so I'm going to ask that you sing along and sing loud and proud, and so we can do this together. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom malachei hashalom malachei elyon. Mi melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzekem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's continue on page 21. Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, Havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz. Havu l'Adonai kevod shemo hishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadra kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim. Adonai al mayim rabim. Kol Adonai Ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arze halevanon vayarkidem kemo egel Levanon Vesiron Kemo ben re'im Idai Kol Adonai Chotzev Lahavodesh Kol Adonai Achil Midbar Achil Adonai Midbar Kadesh Kol Adonai Yechol Elayalot Vayechesov Yeharot Uvhechalo Kulo Omer Kavod Kol Hanai Lamamul Yashava Yeshev Adonai Melech Leolam Adonai Oz Leomo Yichen Adonai Yevarech Et Amo Vashalom Ay, 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 da, da, yai, da, 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 yai, da, da, da. Yeah, die, 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 die. Continue on page 23. Lecha dodi li krakala, pene shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi li krakala, pene shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor bedibor echad, Hishmianu Elameu echad, Adonai echad, Ushemo echad, L'shem tiferet ve'letila. Lecha dodi likra hakala, Pene Shabbat nikah Lecha dodi likra hakala, Pene Shabbat nikah Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki hi mekor habracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh mashava techila. Lecha dodi likra hakala, Pene Shabbat nikah bela. Lecha dodi likra hakala, Pene Shabbat nikah bela. Let's turn to page 24. We'll continue on the bottom paragraph, and we rise and we face towards the door. Bo Loma Cherpa Allah Gam Besimcha Ka Uvet Sohola Tochemune Am Segula Boichala Lecha dodi likra hakala, Pene Shabbat nikah bela. Lecha dodi likra hakala, Pene Shabbat nikah bela. Mourners remain standing for the mourners' Kaddish on page 30. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich machute, B'chayechon v'yamechon v'chaye t'chol Beit Israel, Ba'agala v'vizman kariv v'imru, Yehe shmei rabba mevarach le'olam olamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudusha b'rechu, Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Oseh shalom ben romav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. So I'm going to say a few words about this week's portion, and then we'll do the bulk of the service. And then before the Elenu, I'm going to invite Rabbi Pink up to say a few words about his. This is Park Avenue Synagogue from New York City. He's going to say a few words about the recent election, and hopefully, can we ask you questions? So if you have questions, we'll do so at that time. And then we'll say Elenu, and then we'll have a delicious Kiddush. So Shabbat Shalom. So let's see. So this is, have you ever wanted to do something and someone tells you that you can't? Have you ever had a dream only to have other people tell you, that's crazy, no one does that? Sometimes we internalize those voices. For example, when I started rabbinical school, I was older and had a lot of trouble learning Hebrew. A lot. Like even in the best of situations, learning new languages is hard for me. I have more of a brain for like computers and math. And I saw some of my classmates were using a Hebrew to Hebrew dictionary, and I wanted to use one too, because these were like classmates that I kind of looked up to. One teacher told me kind of rudely to forget it, because my Hebrew would never be good enough to use and understand that book. This week's Torah portion is called last week's Torah portion actually is called Lech Lecha, go with yourself. It is the command that God gives to Abraham when he tells Abraham to leave the motherland. As the portion continues, Abraham complains to God that he is childless. God tells Abraham to take himself outside and to look towards the heavens. The simple meaning of the Hebrew phrase is that God asked Abraham to exit his tent and to look at the stars. The text continues that God tells Abraham that as many stars that are in the heavens, that's how many his descendants he will have. But Rashi gives an alternate translation. He says, quote, according to its midrashic interpretation, he said, go out of your astrology. Yotzei oto hachutza, hachutza vayomer havetna hashemayma. So like that means like go out of your astrology. For you've seen in the signs of the zodiac that you're not destined to have a son. Indeed, Avram did not have a son, but Abraham did have a son. Similarly, Sarai did not give birth, but Sarah did. I will give you another name, said God, and your destiny will change. In other words, God was telling Abraham not to listen to the signs that he wouldn't have a son. Abraham should banish those negative thoughts. And I think that's a wonderful lesson for us to learn. Ask yourself, what is it that you think you can't do? What have you been told that you're just not that good at and that you shouldn't do it? Wouldn't it feel great to prove those people wrong? After many years, I finally learned Hebrew. I'm not the greatest, but I became good enough that I could graduate and become a rabbi. I can read Hebrew, I can speak it, I can understand it. I can read the weekly Torah portion in Hebrew and understand what I'm saying, and that is a huge pleasure. I've even been able to use that dictionary that the teacher said I'd never be able to use. So don't let negative thoughts or negative people hold you back. Lech lecha, go into yourself. Believe in your passions, believe in your abilities, and reach for the stars. Shabbat shalom. We continue with the Baruch Hu on page 39. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMivorach. Baruch Adonai HaMivorach Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim. Uma'avir yom u'me'evi laila, umavdil ben yom u'vein laila, Adonai tziva'ot shemo, el chai v'kayam tamidim lo chaleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Hamari Varavim, page 40. Avat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al Ken Adonai Eloheinu B'shokveinu u'vikumeinu Nasiach bechukecha V'nizmach b'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu u'vahem nehege yomam v'layla. Vavatkar al Tasimimenu leolamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Page 41, we cover our eyes. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantan levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'leftecha v'aderech u'shokbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'einenecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha. Vayom Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael, v'yamarta alehem, v'yasu lahem tzitzit, al kanfei bigdehem, ledorotam v'natnu, al tzitzit hakanfa b'tel v'techelet, v'haya lachem, letzitzit, uraitem oto, uzachartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, v'isitem otam, Velo taturu acharei levavchem acharei einechem asher atem azonim achareihem leman tiskeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'Elohechem Ahani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, Emet. Emet v'emunah kol zot v'kayam aleinu, ki hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'en zulatenu anachnu Yisrael amo. Page 44, U'malchuta b'ritzu kiblu alehem, Moshe u'Miriam u'vnei Yisrael lachanu shira b'simcha rabba, v'yamru chulam, mi chamocha be'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei fele. Malchutecha ra'uvanecha, bokei ayam lifnei Moshe, zeli anu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני יעקב, וגאלה מחזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. Page 45, השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו, מכינו לחיים ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם, ופרוץ עלינו סוכת שלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. Page 46. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברך ירצה וימליך מלכותה, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו, יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ועולמי יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרמן ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקדושה לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דמידרן בעלמא ואמרו. We continue with, we rise and continue with the silent Amida on page 47. Please say the prayers on the page or the ones found in your heart. If you are saying the Salamita, please continue to do so. It is the holiest prayer that we have. The rest of us will read together on page 53. The heavens and the earth and all they contain were completed. On the seventh day, God finished the work, ceasing from all work on the seventh day. Then God blessed the seventh day, making it holy, for on it God ceased from all the work of creation. Baruch atah Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, God of Sarah, God of Rebekah, God of Rachel and God of Leah, great, mighty, awe-inspiring, transcendent God, creator of the heavens and earth. Let's read together. God, who promised protection to our ancestors, ensures life to the dead, the holy, incomparable holy God, desired to give rest to the people Israel, and so provided them with the holy Shabbat. We worship in awe and reverence in God's presence and offer thanks to God's name each day, always. The source of blessing, the master of peace, God, to whom all thanks are due, sanctifies Shabbat and blesses the seventh day, providing sacred rest to a people filled with joy, celebrating it as a symbol of the work of creation. Our God and God of our ancestors, embrace our rest. Make us holy through your mitzvot, and let the Torah be our portion. Fill our lives with your goodness, and gladden us with your deliverance. Purify our hearts to serve you truly. Adonai, our God, lovingly and willingly grant that we inherit your holy Shabbat, that the people Israel, who make your name holy, may find rest on this day. Baruch atah Adonai, who makes Shabbat holy. Yikadav yikadav shemei rabbah, bilma divrach yirtei v'yamlich machutei v'chayechonu v'yamechonu chaydecho beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari v'imeru. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach, le'olam u'amei yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalah shemei dekudesha. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma ve'imeru. Tikabel slot honu va'uton de kol Yisrael kadam avu hondi v'shemaya ve'imeru. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Osei shalom b'mramav hu ya'asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Ve'imeru. Amen. Amen. And now I have the very great pleasure of inviting up Rabbi Pink to our bima.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Aidan Pink from Park Avenue Synagogue in New York City. Thank you to Rabbi Sussman. Thank you to all of you for welcoming our delegation of 9th and 10th graders who are here in Alabama and Georgia to learn about the civil rights era and our history as Americans and as Jews. I should just say before I begin that my wife is from Tallahassee, Florida Panhandle, and grew up in a synagogue very much like this, actually a little bit smaller. So I'm aware from her experience and talking with her friends and people who grew up in her community, how much effort and how much communal responsibility goes into maintaining and supporting a Jewish community in the South like this one. So you should all feel a tremendous sense of pride and accomplishment in making sure that Judaism can thrive in every community in our country. I'm not a political analyst, although before I went into the rabbinate, I was a journalist, so I did cover politics in my previous life. But I think there are three things that I learned, at least, from the results of this week's election for New York City mayor, which I'll go over, and then I'm happy to take any questions that people have. The first is that the primary issue in the campaign was one about affordability. New York, if you've ever visited it, is a very, very expensive city and has only become more so. And frankly, the winning candidate, Mayor-elect Mamdani, had a compelling affordability platform that the other candidates didn't. And so I think any analysis, Jewish or otherwise, that doesn't talk about the main issue of the campaign and only focuses on the Jewish issue is, I think, missing a big part of the picture. But of course, as Jews, even though our Jewish identity is not the only thing that we rely on when we choose who to vote for, it is a very important thing. And for many in our community, his election as an open anti-Zionist is one that we greet, at least the majority, with a great deal of concern. But I think the other thing to take away from the election is that if exit polls are accurate, and while they should always be taken with a grain of salt, there's also no reason to necessarily believe that they're not accurate, is that about a third of New York Jews voted for Mamdani, and two-thirds voted for Cuomo. So what I learned from that is that the Jewish community in New York, and I think by extension the Jewish community throughout the country, really is not in agreement about what anti-Semitism looks like, and about what the response to anti-Semitism should be. And I think it's an open question that I don't have the answer to, though I have my suspicions, where if another minority community in New York City were to say, in a way that the majority of the Jewish community did, that this candidate scares us and stands against our values and perhaps even our safety, I don't know if other communities would have been disregarded the way that many in the Jewish community feel disregarded. At the same time, the fact that 33%-ish of the Jewish community was affirmatively quite excited about Mayor-elect Mamdani shows that it's hard to make that message when many, many people are saying that they don't feel scared. In fact, they feel quite excited by the prospect. I think the challenge of what anti-Semitism looks like and what steps should be taken in response has been one that has had divisions within the Jewish community for several years now. This election, I think, only is a demonstration of it and perhaps an exacerbation of it. And so I think it's our responsibility as a Jewish community, now that we see this data, is to have an internal conversation about what our response to anti-Semitism, both from the left and from the right, should be. I think it will be very challenging for us to all get on the same page. At the same time, it's been challenging for all Jewish history for all Jews to get on the same page about all sorts of things. But my hope is that this conversation or this election has demonstrated the divisions and therefore demonstrated the importance of the Jewish community coming together. And by the way, not just on the issue of anti-Semitism and not just on the issue of the U.S.'s relations with Israel, but also on the issue of affordability. The Jewish campaigners for Mayor-elect Mamdani were also very involved in the anti-poverty movement, which also comes from a great wellspring of Jewish tradition. So it's not true to say that the Jewish community only has one issue, but I think it's important for us to unite and be on the same page when it comes to issues of communal safety and also of ways that we can support all New Yorkers and not only Jewish New Yorkers. I think the final thing that I took away from the results of the election is the great amount of fear that everybody, or many people, no matter who they voted for, both within and outside the Jewish community, expressed when they were deciding who to vote for. Although one of the things that drove many to vote for Mamdani was his optimism, which was in very stark contrast to the other candidates' pessimism. I think both, regardless of who you voted for, of the two major candidates, are both coming from a place of deep concern about the direction of the country and in many cases deep fear for safety and for the future. And I think it's important for the Jewish community to acknowledge the validity of that fear and to press others outside our community for the validity of our fear to be acknowledged. But at the same time, remember that Judaism is not a religion in which we are commanded to cower in fear. On the contrary, it's the religion in which we are commanded to have hope for the future. I was thinking a lot about the teaching of Rabbi Nachman of Braslav, which you may be familiar with. He said, the whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the important thing is not to be afraid. And so I think we should all, as New Yorkers and as Americans, go into this new political era, not to say that there should never be anything that might cause us to fear, but to flip that view and instead have resolve. Resolve to advocate for our rights, resolve to advocate for our interests, and resolve to push for a world of repair, a world of reconciliation, and ultimately a world in which everybody feels welcome in what I think is the greatest city in the world. So I'm happy to take any questions that people have, but I just want to close by saying thank you very much for your warm Southern Jewish hospitality and welcoming us to your community. Thank you. Yes, please.
Sunday school, do they have curriculum in the Sunday school that teaches about the history of Israel and the treatment of the Jewish people uh, back in the 1800s in Europe and on to Israel becoming a state and the wars thereafter?
Yes, and for people who couldn't hear on the live stream, the question was if we have a curriculum in our Sunday school to talk about not only the history of Israel, but the history of European Jewry and for that matter, Middle Eastern Jewry that led to the need for a state of Israel. The answer is yes. In fact, we revamped our curriculum this past year because we found that when our students were going off to college, they were being confronted with a narrative that they didn't have the vocabulary to counter or even to understand or know about. And so actually with Ariel Gluck, our terrific youth coordinator and other people, we started a new a Sunday school program called the Barron Scholarship that was specifically talking about Israel education, the history of Israel, the history of Zionism. Our philosophy is we don't teach it so that people will go to college engaged in the fight. It's because it's part of our heritage and we should know it. That's the primary reason. And we know that this is going to be something that comes up for our young people in the years to come, and we want them to be adequately equipped with all the knowledge that we think they should have.
In the 1960s and 70s, we had some movement off that inquiry. And at some point in time, we got away from it and generally didn't teach it. And I wondered if that happened elsewhere. And I would come on in the people in the 1990s and saw Jewish people that were students. And it seemed to me like they didn't know about the history of Israel. And is that where we may have failed at some point in time?
I think, yeah, I think we've had this discussion. Well, I don't know, we haven't had this discussion. I've had this discussion with other members. I think it's also like the news sources of where young people are getting their news versus people our age are getting their news. But yeah, maybe.
I think it also has to do with, 1948 is not in our teens' lived experience. 1967 is not in our teens' lived experience. And for that matter, the Oslo peace process is not in our teens' lived experience. One of the things that we hope to do is bring in speakers and have exposure to people who lived through those momentous events themselves and can share their perspectives with our teens, just similarly to how we were doing before services started, because we think that those are much more impactful than any sort of traditional Sunday school, which, for as long as there have been Sunday school, there's been complaints about how to improve Sunday school. So it's an ongoing process. Thank you for your question. All right, well, thank you again. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you outside.
Thank you so much. I hope that you guys will take advantage of the tables. I know that thank you so much for coming. It's really a treat to have you. I hope you'll take advantage of our tables and sit and have a Shabbat discussion. I don't know your schedule, but I do hope that there's a lot of information that can be gleaned and so thank you. We continue with the Aleinu on page 56. Aleinu l'shabbat. Breshit Shelo asanu kegore haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegoralenu kechol hamonam, ve'anachnu korim, u'mishtachim u'modim. Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shamayim v'yosed haaretz, u'mashev yikaro b'shamayim imal, u'shkinatu zo, v'govhei meromim, hu Eloheinu ein od, emet malkeinu efes ulato, kakatuv b'torato, V'yatayam v'hashivota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim b'shamayim mimal, ve'al ha'aretz mitachad enod. Kakatu v'toratecha Adonai loch leolam va'ed, v'ne'emar k'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad. Please, mourners, please remain standing on page 50 for Mourners Kaddish on page 58. This week, we lovingly remember Eliezer Weinstock, Reuben Alter Arnav, Pauline Karstens, Fanny Schwartz-Mann, Lena Rutenberg, Gabby Salama Kapp, Esther Schulwolf Fleischman, Thelma Kalik, Joe Capaluto, Reuben Hanan, Karen Herman, Richard Jaffe, Isaac Berman, Regina Cohen, Ralph Franco, Marjorie Herman, Lillian Ravinsky, Regina Schulwolf, Rose Belitsky, and Ellen Miller Sturman. The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 58. Yit gadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'yama divrach chirutei v'yamlich machutei, b'chayechon v'yamechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach Leolam Ulameo Maya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitraman V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Kodesha, Le'elam Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru, Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, B'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mramav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. Thanks. Thank you. So we're going to continue. We'll have announcements. So this Sunday is religious school. Tomorrow is Tat Shabbat. We're going to be having a lot of families for 0 to 8. If you have kids or grandkids ages 0 to 5, please bring them in. We have Tat Shabbat at 11. Normal services at 9:30 till 10:45, and then children's service from 11 to 11:30. And then we have really nice spinach lasagnas for lunch, a communal lunch. Sunday 11:09, we have religious school. Monday 11:10, we have a Jewish community concert. That's Kol Zimra, a community choir out of Chicago, along with some local singers. The local cantor, I think David, who's a cantor at TBO, is going to be singing. And there's going to be a light reception afterwards. So that should be a lot of fun to come together. Then on Sunday, 11/16, there's Rise Up Together, an interfaith musical celebration at Temple Mishkan Israel in Salma in honor of their 125th anniversary. So I hope, and then our Wednesday, 11/19, is the Jewish Federation of Central Alabama's annual meeting. This Tuesday, we're going to Heart of Alabama Food Bank to help with their increased needs these local days. So if you want any information about that, please come to me and we'll go together to volunteer. I believe that's it. Did I miss anything? Open it up from the, did we miss anything? No? And the final is a thank you to Sisterhood, who came in and gave us this lovely kiddush and beautiful tables. And really, it was lovely. It is lovely. Let's conclude with Adon Olam. I'm sorry, with Yigdal on page 62. יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא ואין עד אל מציאותו, אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו, נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחודו. אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך עליו קדושתו, לרדם בלא קבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו, הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר, יוצר גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו, אל אנשי גדולתו ותפארתו, לא קם בישראל כמושהו, נביא ומביט אל תמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לעמו אל, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו, לא יחליף האל ולא יאיר דתו, לעולמים זדולתו, צופה ויודע סתרנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו, גומל לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לראשי רע כרשעתו, ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפדות בחכי קץ ישועתו, מתים יחיה ברוך חסדו, ברוך הדעת שם כתהילתו, Baruch Adei Shem Tehilato. Baruch Adei Shem Tehilato. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with, we're going to have Kiddush right here, so then we can just go straight to eat. So please stay with us for Kiddush as we go here. So if anyone wants to come up and do, and you're welcome to do your own Kiddush at the end, but we'll do like a ceremonial one. Just so we don't have that we have Ayed Erev, Ayed Boker, Yom HaShi'i. Ayed Hu HaShamayim V'Haaretz V'Chol Zaman. Ayed Chol Yomim V'Yom HaShi'i V'Halachim Asher Asa. V'Yishmot V'Yom HaShi'i Kol Malachim Asher Asa. V'Yirach Elohim Et Yom HaShi'i. Vayikra Yeshoto, Yirot Shamayim Kol Malachto, Asher Bara Elohim La'asot, Rotai Sabri Asabri, Baruch Atah Adonai Elohim Melech HaOlam, Borei B'riat HaAfen, Baruch Atah Adonai Elohim Melech HaOlam, Asher Geshar Mitzvotav V'Ratzav Nishapat Roshel V'Yahad Ramsan Yishivalim Tikaron L'Maseh Reishi Yikriyon Tehilah V'Yikravim Kodesh V'Eferesiat V'Yikravim 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 Yatzam Yirkidasham Mikol Amim Shalom Barakot Ve'Ahav B'U'Prasam In Halzayim Amen. And then I'm going to ceremonial wash for everybody. Then we're going to, well, we're going to roll all of this out. And we have these sheets if you want to do it for yourself. Really, really encourage you to do so. But so I say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu am tzivat yadayim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Amen. Shabbat shalom. The bathrooms are straight towards the back. The food is that way. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Right here. Just bring it with you. Thanks so much. Thank you so much.
The thing is, there's so much that we want to back it up. You got to get today, you got to learn all the prayers. No. So, I'm also learning about this today, but there's only so many hours to do this. It's true. And Yeah, so I'm 65.